There we go. And let's just take a couple of minutes to arrive in this wonderful present moment. And I had this thought earlier that we're looking for the truth in so many ways. And my thought was, well, you're looking for the truth. Here is it. Here it is. This is it. The present moment, the only truth there is. Where else could a truth exist? So I invite you to become curious about the truth. This moment for you. The only truth there is. What is the truth of your present moment? How does it feel, smell, look, taste? What is alive in your mind, your heart, your gut? Right in this moment, what do you actually know to be true from direct experience? Notice your breath in this moment. Each breath, just the truth. Could it be that right now in this moment it's that simple? Just for a moment. Could it be that this is it? That this is all the truth that is required for this moment to be? And I invite you to turn your attention outwards. outwards towards the group. These hours together now. What we will contemplate, what you're bringing. And when you're ready, open your eyes. Yeah. So, what's cooking? Vanessa.
I really appreciated the conversation about why and our motives when asking a why. Are we curious? And specifically, what stood out was motive in the asking. And you gave this example of, why did you do that? And it's really not a why. And this week, as I walked past our laundry room and I saw my husband had just left his work clothes like a couple feet away from the empty washing machine, I went into our room and I'm like, why did you just leave your clothes like on the floor there? And it was amazing as it was unraveling, that part of myself that stepped back and was observing it. And I was very clear that it was an accusation, that I wanted something particularly done. And I said that in real time. I said, oh, I realize I'm doing this because a couple of days before I had shared about the why. And even in that moment, I was sharing, I did the work on this when this was my work when I worked with Katerina this past week, that I told him about the different motives of why, and he was quiet, he listened to it. And then I said, what do you think about it? And his answer was, yeah, I can see how you do that sometimes. And I probably do that as well. And I noticed I was disappointed in the answer, and I had an immediate judgment. Oh, he uses my vulnerability against me. I'm sharing something vulnerable, and this is what happens. And as I thought about it in context of what you had shared in class, I realized that what I was wanting in that moment was, I'm sharing something vulnerable. I want to connect with you. I want you to share vulnerably. And I didn't say that. I didn't ask for what I was wanting. I said, what are you thinking? As if he truly were free to tell me whatever he was thinking.
Yeah.
And then I realized the step beyond that is, I wanted to know if he could see where it applied to him. And the motive in that was, if I can see he's working on himself, then I don't have to worry about that and I can be safe. If I don't know you're working on yourself, then I feel like I need to do something about it. So that conversation was really helpful as I noticed it unfold, and really the motive, not just in a why, but the motive when I ask a question.
Yeah.
Is it really a question? And is it an honest question? Or is there something more?
Beautiful, Vanessa, taking the why to the next level, because it's so true, right? All our questions like could be investigated sometimes. Like some of them are pretty dubious.
Yeah, and in conjunction with that, I'm curious what you would think about this potential sub-question that came up as I was listening to different people this week, and I didn't ask it. I was thinking about it in the same vein as this, like when we ask somebody why, you know, or I want my significant other to do something. I remember a time years ago in therapy, and my therapist said about my husband, is there anything he could do like that would make it okay? It essentially, that was the question. And it was an interesting question to have posed to me, because I realized in that moment there just wasn't. Like, I kept saying, I want him to do this, but there wasn't. So I'm wondering, as a potential sub question, or how it could be reworded, like sometimes in question 3, it's like, what's the payoff for believing this thought? And I wondered if there could be a question of like, when it's in regards to like a, you know, a love interest, or, you know, it doesn't have to be a love interest, but what's the setup? You know, when you're believing this thought, what's the setup? And like I said, I don't know if that's the wording, but it reminded me of that. That is a setup. I'm saying, I want you to do X, Y, and Z, and this is true. And yet there's that part of me, it wouldn't matter. It just wouldn't matter. So what do you think about that idea of this sub question of like, what's the setup, or how would you phrase it, if at all?
Well, what do I think first? What's the setup? What happens in me, I notice, is it goes a little bit to my head, this question, if it's phrased like that. What's the setup? It becomes a little analytical, trying to sort of figure out some sort of a structure. And I don't think that's necessarily so helpful, because it can take me away from sort of the deepening of the inquiry. So something a little more immediate, I think, would be preferable from my perspective. I really enjoy this. It's a bit like what's in it for you. There's like a simpler phrasing, which is, what do you like about this thought? And then, what don't you like about this thought? But what you like about it could potentially open to some of that. Like, but for me, I think, and I do want to hear about your, like, whenever you're ready, your guys' homework, because for me, it would be one of those that could, like, my intention with this homework was to sort of nudge you in the direction of letting your questions come more out of what's going on than out of the sort of list of given questions. And for me, this would be a question that could come up for me, like exactly what perhaps that question your therapist asked, like, well, is there actually anything he could do, or what should he do to satisfy you? Like, what could he do to satisfy you? Might be a very relevant question in one inquiry, and not be so relevant in another. So I think I would not try to make it into a fixed part of the arsenal, but more have it as, you have discovered that actually was a very useful question for you back then, and that's where like, that's how we feel, or how we know what to look at. That's part of like how we figure out what to look at in question 3 is our own experience. Like, oh yeah, I actually remember that I once experienced that there was no way he was ever going to satisfy me. So let me point to that and see what my client, or if I'm holding myself, what I see in this situation. And then it could be asked in any way that sort of fits into the situation, which would be like, would it actually help if he did that? Like, what I want him to this, I want him to that, I want him to this. Okay, so, or like, what would you have? What is it you think you would have if he did it? Or yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
I hear you saying that so I hear it as, it's in that same category as what do you like about this? Or even, what's the payoff or something like that. It's like, what's in it for you? It's a different way of saying it.
Yeah.
And I hear you saying that may go into an analytical maybe, or the mind. I don't know what you said, analytical. And I just see that sometimes, like you said, I heard you say a couple of weeks ago, where I don't want to just be, tumbling in all my emotions. Can I step back slightly and observe?
Yeah.
So I was wondering in that, and it doesn't have to be those exact words, but it was that asking a question like that, an opportunity for them to observe. And I hear clearly that it may work in one situation and not another,
Right.
and I've found that when I'm working with someone as a client, and they will just or partner work, and they'll just ask, like, go through this gambit of questions that should be asked,
Yeah.
that they don't really land with me. I'd rather them ask something as it comes up, not just like, oh, the next question is, the next
Yeah.
question is. So so I'm a little bit confused at, something that could help with them observing, and versus something that might make them go into their head, and maybe there's no clear answer for that. It's just, why am I asking it, and then like case by case basis.
Yeah, well, for me, what I was, the one where I talked about the head was the what's the setup phrasing. So for me,
Right.
there is a distinction between what's the setup and what you like about it. I think they have a very different quality.
Okay.
So what you like about it seems very immediate to me, and it opens up like I can go
Like, what are
anywhere
you
with that.
liking in this like just what's coming up for you, as opposed to
What's the
thinking,
setup is more of a sort of a strategic cause and effect, like chung Newtonian mechanism I need to figure out, where what you
yeah.
like about it is completely, it could be, well, I like the feeling it gives me, or I like
Oh,
how
yes.
I can keep running circles around him, or
Yeah, I can hear that what's the setup, as I hear it within myself, there's somewhat of an accusation that there's something there, as opposed to what do you like about it is
yeah,
really, it could be anything.
yeah,
Like, I can hear that.
yeah, yeah. So that's another aspect. That wasn't actually what I was pointing to, and I really agree. I think that's perhaps even more relevant, that there is like a sense of accusation. Now I think, again, when you're in the flow of a facilitation, if the atmosphere is there for it, you can make an accusation. It's not dangerous if the rapport is there. Like you can just point to, like, it sounds like that's, yeah, I don't know what the example would be, but something like that doesn't sound true to me, almost. Or like, is there
Mhm.
something deeper, or are you sure that that's really what it is? Or you can bring some of those, if the situation allows for it, like, and they get a chance to say, yes, I'm sure, and then that's it.
Yeah.
So that's again like bringing ourselves in a little more as a support, like as a as an instrument that can sort of feed back to people, like, well, right now it feels like it's very heady what you're saying. Is that also your experience? Or, and then they might say, no, I feel like I'm completely in the pit of my gut. And then it's like, okay, good. Then I misjudged or misheard.
Yeah.
So that was on the accusation bit.
Hmm.
Yeah. Does that feel?
That, yeah, it just I appreciate hearing your thoughts on it, and I just noticed it just opens up other things for me to consider. And I think what stands out to me the most when I ask something, or even asking it of you, is like, just what's the motive, what's the reason in it, and if there's
Yeah.
some reason to, if I think I know what they should say, or if I'm leading in some way that I'm just, need to take a step back. It's like, what's going on with me in this moment. So
Yeah.
yes, I appreciate your thoughts.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And again, like, not in facilitation, but in real life, like in these situations with your husband, uh, these questions are so interesting to be aware of. Like, where are they coming from? And there's so many sneaky ways we express our needs through
Yeah.
questions, instead of owning them and just saying, I would appreciate if you would do this. I notice I get really annoyed to see them lying there 2 feet from the
Well,
thing.
yes. And to add a last piece to that, what I notice about myself is this idea that vulnerability can be I don't know, dangerous but unsafe.
Yeah.
That there has to be some balance
Yeah.
of vulnerability in the
Yeah.
relationship. If I'm
Yeah.
the one that's always exposing myself,
Yeah.
somehow that's wrong, and that that doesn't feel good to me. And so then I notice when I learn something new, then I want to use it as a weapon and notice, oh, he's not really asking for what he wants. Oh, look, I was listening to something on my phone. This
Yeah.
happened the other night in bed,
Yeah.
and it's really quiet. And he says to me, "Are you listening to something?" And in my mind, I think it is. He knows I'm listening to something. And then he, like, at some point, throws back his side of the cover and takes his pillow. Like, there's like a whole, like a physicality to it. He goes in the family room to lay on the couch, and in my mind, I think, lots of colorful words. And I'm just like, why don't you just ask for what you want? Why don't you
Yeah.
just say, can you wear, so I noticed that I learn it, and I'm like, oh, this feels very true. And then there's this balance of power that comes in again. Oh no, this is too much vulnerability. You are not showing your side of
Yeah.
vulnerability. And so it's uneven. So I see, as I said last week, this looking outside myself for agreement, for validation, some level of sameness. So I'm sharing in vulnerability. You don't appear to. This is not balanced with what's going on. So and it's painful to be measuring it.
And I want to offer that, like, in my experience, what's very often going on when we are in that sense of it's not balanced, or what you're describing, is that what's really going on is that we're using vulnerability as a how do you call it? Like, we're trading in vulnerability. You're like, there's an attempt to achieve something through exposing ourselves or being vulnerable, and therefore we go a little too far in our own vulnerability. Like
Go too far, we share too much. What do you mean, go too
could
far?
be share too much, could be or yeah. One thing that's very often the case with being the vulnerable one is that it's a path to connecting. Like, I've learned that when I really become vulnerable, that I get some sort of connection with another, and in trying to get that, we might be with a group of friends, or it could be your spouse as well, but just be the one in the group of friends who always takes their heart out and puts it on the counter, and everybody can stab it for an hour, and we all talk about, like, and then when we go home, it's like we have a hangover because we've just gone, it feels like it wasn't the right context, or it was too harsh an environment to be so vulnerable. That's what I mean by going too far. And but it's because we have this is how to get connection, would be in this example, could be the story in this
Yes,
example with
no,
the
that's
cafe.
really ringing true. And tell me a little bit more about that. This is how I get connection through
Yeah.
vulnerability. This is
Yeah.
really ringing true to me.
Yeah.
And then there's an expectation of, oh, this person will be vulnerable. If they're not vulnerable, then I don't feel that connection.
Yeah. And then the danger might be, okay, then I'll go even further Like I'll bare myself even more. I'll get even more naked. I'll share even more of my, stuff. But will they not at some point also then come to me soft? And then if they don't, for whatever reason, like if they have better boundaries around that, or if they are out of touch with themselves, or there can be 100 reasons why they don't, then we are left there, like in what feels like an unequal or unbalanced, where I'm just completely naked, I'm hardly even wearing flesh, and the other person is in their armor, and we just feel, and that's when vulnerability feels, when you get that it's too much. It's dangerous to be this vulnerable.
And then what, Ernest? This is really good stuff. And then what though? If you're at that point, then what?
Then you realize that, and then you sit down and you do the work on this, like, I'm too vulnerable, looking at the motives. Like, for instance, vulnerability is a path to connection, or what is it? So I would say, what is it that's going on in me just before I go too far, right? Just in that moment, right before I share that thing that isn't really done in me, and it feels a little too early to share it, but I share it anyway. Like, why didn't I wait until tomorrow? Like, why did I bring it right now? What was I trying to achieve? And you'll find there, perhaps, I need him to be vulnerable. I need him to connect with me. I need him to see me. I need us to be more in touch with each other. There can be a hundred different things, and that's the thing you work, because that's the driver. That's what's driving you to this strategy. And you'll probably find, of course, that this was a strategy that worked when you were a kid or something. Very often, that's how it was, right? With this vulnerability stuff. Like, if I cry, I get attention, or my mother's love, or my father's love, for that matter. So we can uncover some of these patterns and get a little more boundaries, a little more, holding ourselves a little more.
So I hear you. I see that I wanted you to say, and now when you're here, this is a way, then what you do the next step, like forward. I'm not expressing it correctly, or I don't know if I'm expressing it effectively, but what I'm hearing is that it's not really like, and now I've done this, what do I do now additionally with this person? It's to take a step back, and what was the motive, what was driving it, and then I can, and then there's more to find in there. Like that makes sense. What was I really wanting, instead of, oh, here's this vulnerability, and now what do I do when this person is showing up this way? It's just go back and what was I wanting right before?
Yeah.
Dang it. It's so great that it's always me. And sometimes I'm like, I don't want it to be me.
Of course. Yeah, no. And you can also, like, just, if you really feel, did you say that you were too vulnerable, or were those words that I put on it? Do you experience that? No, you said you were dangerous. It felt like there was.
It feels
something
unsafe
dangerous.
to I feel too exposed. So maybe that's too vulnerable or too exposed. Yeah.
And that's another, like, thing you can look at as well. That's another path to go down. Like, what does that actually mean? Too exposed for what? Like, what is it? What is it that will happen if you're that exposed? What is the problem with that? But he gets to be him. No matter what. Put his clothes there on the floor and not be vulnerable, and put it back on you. So let me give you one more, Vanessa. Now that we have this door open. Yeah. So a pattern that I have seen in relationships, and it's usually the same setup as yours, the woman and the man, and the woman is the one that craves the vulnerability and does the vulnerability thing. Now, one thing that then happens, like, one of the reasons why he may be a little guarded on this, and you can just check that out, is, what do you do when he becomes a little bit vulnerable? So your boundaries with yourself, you like overshare or overexpose, and that would very easily indicate that when he then opens up a little bit, you're like on him and opening it up more and prying it open and pulling out more and wanting more, which can feel overwhelming for the other person, of course, which then will make the other person pull back a little bit. So, and I don't know any more about this than what we've just heard. I'm just saying that that would be a typical pattern, and you can look at that, whether you allow him, like there's the boundaries on your side, but there's also you allowing him his boundaries around his vulnerability. And usually when we really crave something, when we get a little bit, we'll like go for more, right? So that could be also a bit of a frightening situation for him. So you can look for that as well if you want to have fun with it.
Oh, is it fun?
Yeah, well.
Yeah, I'm just being silly in it, but because I notice it's opening up as you're saying that. There's this flood of conversations and moments, and I feel resistance to an old story that I am responsible for another person. I'm responsible for their feelings. I'm responsible. If I didn't say the right thing, that person won't share. Like somehow I'm ruining it, or somehow I have the power to make it better. So I feel that resistance of like, oh, maybe I didn't receive it in a particular way. And so now I'm responsible for the fact that he, isn't sharing or isn't being vulnerable. And like there's a lot of story around that, this idea that it's important to tiptoe around people in meaningful relationships. And if they choose not to share for whatever reason, I'm responsible. So then there's not this freedom, it's a manipulation. I have to, oh, sweetheart, please tell me what's on your heart and mind. Tell me, like, it's like I have to treat them, so I just noticed, and we don't have to have a big talk about it, although I could talk about it, but that I just see what comes up is I notice as you're saying that, I notice that resistance and this other story coming into it.
Yeah, and if there's resistance to it, it's probably because it's an untrue story. So you can just pack it
really
away.
See, I think in relation you're being sarcastic. I'm like, wait,
Northern
you said
European
not to just push
humor.
through the fear.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's good. And yes, and as you say that, I'm like, yes, I can see it. And then I also recognize there's some fear in that. So
yeah, and I want to add also that like for that would I also obviously invite you to take a look at that story, or suggest even that you do that, and something there. Yeah, no, that's a really rich story. I have to tiptoe around them and speak in a certain way in order to not hurt their feelings. Let me just say, you're the one who wants him to be more vulnerable, right? So that there's something there from the very start.
Yeah.
Right. Why is that? Like that could also be an interesting thing to, if you haven't, you may have done worksheets on this already, but if you haven't, like, why is it? What is it you think you would achieve if my husband was more vulnerable? And then a list of all the things you think that would then bring. And then you can turn around to if I was more vulnerable, and then look at the list. Yeah. Thank you, Vanessa.
Thank you.
And I also really thank you for the way you listen by mirroring it into your reality. Instead of keeping it as mental concepts, you check it with your experience, which is really which feels really good. So thank you for that as well. Okay, Alara.
Hi.
Hi.
So I have a question and then a comment about the homework. If
Sounds good.
that's still alive after the question, but who knows what
Who
world
knows?
we'll explore. So my partner was sharing with me about his like mental mindscape of the political climate and what could happen. And it was, can you hear me okay?
Yeah,
Can
I
you hear
think
me
it's good
better
that
if I turn off my video?
yeah, let's do that. Yeah.
Okay. So he was sharing a mindscape, and it was just nightmare after nightmare, getting darker. Um, and I've had this in the past where when someone's talking about something that I don't necessarily agree with, I'm not sure how to be present with them. They're not asking for inquiry. I empathy doesn't seem, I go a little cold. And so I'm wondering how to be with someone who's revolving a story that they're really convinced about. And they're not asking for inquiry. How?
Yeah. Well, in a situation like the homework, where the fundamental sort of intention is to do inquiry, I would say it's fair to frame it, to have the meeting framed by, we are going for inquiry here, right? That's an okay assumption and intention to have with a meeting. So in such a setup, if the other person doesn't seem to be moving towards inquiry in this example, my experience, I think what I would do is I would just share that. The role as the facilitator is, as I see it.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Go
There
ahead.
was a misunderstanding. My partner, not my homework partner, my
Okay.
life partner, my
Okay.
boyfriend.
Okay, good. Okay, that's a difference.
Someone outside of inquiry world, my best friend, my boyfriend, whoever it is.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what is preventing you from saying, I don't want to listen to this?
The thought that a good partner listens to this.
Yeah, good.
and cares.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. So then what do you do?
Well, I fake it.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
Honestly.
that's yeah. So what you're then living is, a good partner fakes being interested, right?
Oh, Ernest.
So is that the truth you want to live?
What? No.
No. Okay. So something is off, right? A good partner listens. I am not able to listen. What do we do? So what does a good partner do when she's not, when she knows the rule is you're supposed to listen, and she finds that she can't, right? A good partner. So a bad partner fakes it. It sounded like, judging from your screen there, right? So what does a good partner do?
She says, I care about you, and I'm not able to genuinely listen with an open heart. I'm shutting down. Is there another way I can support you? Would you like a cuddle? Quiet cuddle.
Yeah. Yeah. That sounds really sweet. What do you think?
Fuck. The honesty is super confronting. Like,
Yes.
The follow-up belief, I think, is if I'm authentic, people will leave me.
Yeah.
Like, people can't handle genuine me.
Nope.
Right.
Yeah. So that's the choice, right? Should I be genuine me, or should I be fake me?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Should I be genuine me who may be dismissed, or should I be fake me who will not be there, but be perceived as being there, and so worthy of love? Now, you may just notice, how are you treating the other person when you're believing this, that they can't take my authenticity, I need to fake, pretend to be interested? How are you treating him?
Fragile, inferior, dependent on me, unable to as a stuck story. They're not alive in that moment. They're a stuck story for me.
Yeah.
And so something to be controlled. I'm treating them as something to be managed and controlled.
Yeah. Yeah. And let me do a little shortcut there. Like, if it was true about him that he wouldn't be able to take your authentic offer here, your honesty, in this clear and authentic way, who would he have to be that person?
Someone else.
Well, yeah, you if we
Maybe I
hope.
didn't understand the question.
No, yeah. No, but I was looking for some characteristics, like you use some of them: fragile, inferior.
Oh, who would he
insecure.
have to be?
Like, what kind of person would not be able to take your authentic truth when you speak it the way you just spoke it? Like, I notice I'm unable to hear you, and I want to be there with you.
So question 5, right? So codependent. And scared, very needy of my approval.
Yeah. Yeah, just look
and
at
not interested in honesty.
Yeah. Okay, so needy, fragile, codependent, insecure, not interested in honesty, inferior. Is that the kind of partner you want?
No.
Okay. So then it's a great check, right? If you show up that way and you're actually right, he leaves you, you're better off.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a big,
really effective questioning there, Ernest.
yeah, and it's moving a bit fast, right? So that's why I call it a shortcut. But I just want to point out, for that part of you that believes this, that actually becoming that person it may be true that some people can't actually stand it, right? It may be true. I mean, you may have made a correct observation that there are people in your world that when you become genuinely authentic with them, they leave you, right? But the question is then, at this point in your life, are you interested in having them in your life if they don't want your honest truth?
This is wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
No.
No. No. So it's almost a win-win, right? Either I get to cuddle in silence, or I get rid of him and the space is open for someone who can take it. But it's also brutal in a way, you know. And so there could be a deeper, like a worksheet or something leading into this. But at the end of the day, you know, that's how we can live our lives. Yes, I accept that 20% of my friends will disappear. And that will open up for another group that will come in who are actually interested in my honesty. So, you know, by what was it? I just posted it on my website today. So good timing. Let me find it. Can I find it quick? Oh my God, Facebook. I am so bad at this. It's ridiculous. Yeah, I hear someone laughing. I'm happy.
That's Laura.
I think Facebook is spending a lot of time editing some messages from the administration, so give them a little break today.
Thank you. So I think I was just blaming Facebook for my own inability to understand social media. This is from Shakespeare. Polonius speaks this in Hamlet. This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man. I will say it again. This above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as the night the day, thou canst not then be false to any man. And the thou canst not then be false to any man, I take it as, you know, you will treat everyone kindly, or you will become good to all. If you follow your own self, then it can be no different. So this question of, can I trust my authentic self? Can I really show up as me? You know, well, maybe it's the kindest possible version of us. Maybe it's actually kinder to someone who can't take your authenticity, to not have to be around you. Right? Because the only alternative is a fake you walking around. And who wants that?
I feel like I've just been kind of tumble washed, and it feels really good, but I feel complete with that.
I won't pour any more on you.
I don't want to change.
So you get.
I don't want to go change gears into the homework right now. That's not up for me. I was going to sit with this. Thanks.
Thank you. I think I heard you say that you were skipping the homework. I didn't
hear that last part. Could you?
You're skipping the homework part. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, no. I didn't hear what you said before that, but people are smiling, so I'm guessing it was your kind of lovely humor. I think
they're smiling at your loveliness, but let's not fight about that. That's good. Thank you, Alara. Now they definitely are. Okay. Good. So other questions, or what was the homework like? What was it like to be cut off from your wonderful questions, Ragnar? Oh, you need to unmute, Rana. You need to unmute.
Yes, I really like that exercise because I could really feel so much more connection within myself and with my partner. It was so sweet. And I have to ask you one thing. At one moment, my partner, she's talking about some difficult situation when she was grown up. She's talking about that. And then I saw inside me a picture of her being a little girl at the same kind of situation. And I just said that to her. I just want to share what I feel. I see this little girl being in the same situation. And then she said to me, is that about you or is it about me? And then I said, I think it's both. And she accepted that, and she said she felt it herself. So that was a really good connection, and we could take it deeper and look at the situation when she was a child. That was the core of her feelings when she was grown up. So
to understand you, Ragnar, did that deepening come out of you sharing this image that you saw?
I think so, but I don't know. I can't know. That was my feeling.
Yeah.
I could bring it deeper. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So that was a deeper connection coming out of that, and really good. It felt really good. But at the most, it was this feeling of connection was really, really nice to feel. Yeah. And also, of course, this maybe hesitation sometimes, should I say this or not? But I just tried it on, and yeah, it was really interesting, deepening experience. Yeah.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that question, is this about you or is this about me?
Yeah.
I just want to hold us there for a second. I think one of the I think I said that actually when I introduced this last time, that one of the very liberating experiences I had coming into the work was this separation of me and you, not thinking, you know, someone can feel someone else. And Katie's very clear on this, that you never feel, you cannot feel another person, right? And I think that's a very healthy, and obviously healthy, and or like I agree with it. I'm also finding that when there is an authentic connection with someone, like a bridge of trust and real, like what you experienced here, through not just going through the standard questions, but actually being there with the person in their world. When we go there and really connect, then like our ability to simulate or empathize with other people is actually very advanced. I'm finding it to be very advanced for human beings. And if we're not, like, obviously, if we have issues, they can get in the way of this empathy, right? They can be so noisy. If someone says something that triggers something in us, then that can take up, that can activate so much that the whole screen goes down and we're only seeing our own world. But if we feel relatively unaffected or like not triggered, which is especially usually if we have an authentic sense of I'm meeting you from my heart, or I have like a heartfelt connection with you, then the ability to empathize, of course, coming from our world, but really mirroring or connecting into the other person's world, in my experience, allows intelligent observations to come up that are sometimes like helps us or allows us to see things that are blind, that the other person is blind to, that like blind angles for the other person.
Yeah.
Because we don't have that issue they have. We can access some parts of ourselves where this whole, I love that concept of resonance.
Yeah.
You all know what that is. Like there is a string is plucked in one instrument, and then the vibrations will activate a similar tone in another instrument. They resonate, they swing with each other. And I do think that that's one of the things we humans can do when we are like as instruments, when we are relatively clear and then connected through in the medium of string instruments, the medium of sound, of air, of course, but there's something else resonating with us. So in that way, I really do believe that something can arise in me that is intelligent and says something about what's going on in you. It's not because I'm feeling you, it's because I'm resonating or empathizing with you, and there's relatively free over here, so it's an authentic resonation, reaction that comes. And sharing that can be very valuable. And I think we have in the work community got a bit of like, and I imagine that's where this question came from. And that's just my story. I don't know who asked or what was going on, but this question, is that about you or is that about me? Sounds like an echo of that fear. Like, don't, this is, yeah. And my personal experience with sharing something like that is either it activates something directly, like, yeah, that's exactly, you're right, that's exactly what it feels like, could the other person might sometimes say, right? Yeah. Or it's like, no, that's not it exactly. But that can bring something else. They'll go like, no, not when I was little, it was more when I was 14 or something. And then they're moving into that thing. So it's still, even if your input wasn't spot on, it still activates something that's valuable for the other person.
Yeah, I see. Yeah, interesting.
And in that way, and this is to all, right? In that way, the conclusion for me is it very often pays to share it when it comes up. If it comes up strong, you'll get some sort of benefit. If you can live with the other person saying, no, that's not how it is at all. You have to be able to live with that and embrace that with an open heart, of course, right? But if you can, then there's almost nothing to lose. And I'm not talking about taking over the inquiry. I'm talking about when something comes up that is strong, then to actually dare to share it and then see what happens. And it sounds like that's what you did. And that when the question came, is that about you or me? You gave a sufficient answer for the other person to relax. And then it opened up to something for the other person. Yeah. So that's very beautiful. That's a path I really want to point to. That's part of what I want to point to with this exercise, that we can use ourselves as instruments. Yeah.
Very nice. Very
so thank you, Ragnar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ernest.
Yeah.
Really.
Okay. Tamira.
Yeah, so I didn't do the homework, so if anyone would still be willing to go through it again, I would love to. So my partner couldn't do it. That's the first practical thing. And then thanks to Vanessa, I could hear my husband say hallelujah. I found myself in your shoes and could really relate to what you were going through, and felt really touched just that you open up the process. So thanks to that. And what stick to me from last session, Ernest, was that you were sharing that sometimes there is this, I don't know if you didn't say triggered, but when you were with your wife, sometimes you go into the frozen states, like you said, like for 5-6 minutes, like you freeze, and then you come out and then share. And I'm really curious if you could share a bit more about that. I had with my husband, I had a moment, and I saw that I didn't go into ping pong so much anymore, and that I stopped and said, I can't talk with you now. I need some space. I just need to process that. And I didn't, I just sat with it, not doing, I don't know, there was no work, but I just sat with it. And then I felt I related from a different place. Like I could authentically more, I was more really feeling into what was touching me. And that ended in a, in something that I think wouldn't have happened if I would just have gone like da 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 da, like the automatic thing. And it wasn't 5-6 minutes, but so yeah, maybe you, I don't know if that's a question, but it feels like an important part for me to slow down being with people and being in intense, like when I'm really triggered, to slow down and to take time. And I was thinking of Katie saying her son, if he's triggered, he goes into the bathroom and does a worksheet. And I see that doesn't happen to me when I'm triggered. I just don't stop. I do worksheet and then come back. It's not happening.
I think
possible, right?
Part of what that is, in my experience with my wife, when I can be frozen for 6 minutes and then come back out, or I didn't remember like if I said 6 minutes, but whatever, like for whatever time, and then come back out, is that in how we relate in these conversations that are difficult. First of all, we are aware that this is potentially difficult. So we are both stepping in from a perspective of an awareness that triggers might go off here, right? And then what's at the core, I think, of maybe there are two things at the core. One is a commitment to stay in connection, which feels really important, that no matter what happens, I'm committed to staying in this connection with you. And for me, going out and doing a worksheet on the toilet is in a way breaking the connection to go fix myself and coming back. And I find it valuable to, when it's alive, then stay where the aliveness is, even if that's a lot more complicated. Like so there is this commitment to be in connection and stay in connection, even when it's tough or difficult or upsetting or something. And that's like a fundamental trust that we will do whatever we can to stay in connection. Of course, you can't promise that you won't be triggered in a way that would actually take you out. But I haven't seen that happening for 20 years or something. It's like a commitment to be connected, and then in that there is the willingness to wait for 6 minutes while I'm frozen, for instance, right? And then I think the other element is also a big commitment to as best we can owning our experiences. So owning what's going on for me. So in that situations, for instance, it would be like, okay, I may be able to say, I need some time now, or okay, I'm frozen, give me a moment, or like, or to express like what I'm going to say now is really difficult for me to say, and I'm really concerned I'll hurt you with it. It really scares me. And I want to try to say it, and I really hope that you'll receive this as best you can, or something, like really owning what's going on as I communicate. So this freeze experience that I described is not, it doesn't sound like it's quite similar to what you described. What you described was more like an inner processing, which I would describe as a slowness in communicating and really checking in what's going on. For what I was describing, and I can get back to that, but what I was describing, just to be clear, was like a fear reaction of complete freeze. And it's like freeze, flight, fight, one of those, right? And so the fight and the flight are the ones that we are trying to take out, you could say, by committing to connect and owning experience, right? And then I don't remember. I remember I told you the story. I don't remember why, but the point in my experience is I can't do anything. I'm completely frozen. Like I'm so overwhelmed with the fear or whatever it is that it's frozen over. And then gradually I relax and then I come back online and then I can communicate again. That's the experience. Now, what I hear you describe as as taking a break, to taking the time to go through a certain process inside is more like a slowness in the communication. And that for me, that's more akin to owning your experience, like really going in, like instead of just reacting out of it, then going in to figure out what's really going on in me underneath the trigger or underneath the fear or underneath whatever is up, and then communicating from that place, which obviously allows for a deeper kind of communication. So I don't know, how was the experience for you? Like, how did your husband react, and how did you move on from there?
Well, I went through some tears, and it was quite intense, and then afterwards it felt very light, like, and it didn't feel like I was vomiting something out. Sometimes that can feel like lightness afterwards.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel like that. I could go out the door and talk to my daughter, and it was like, and she was like, sometimes when we have these fights or whatever, like fights, then she's frozen, she freezes, and she didn't, like, I could get in, and we didn't immediately connect it, and it was like life was going on. And I pointed something out to him that I think, I mean, he reported back to me also, got him in a core. So and then I could see that I was telling him something like 2 hours later that was related to me. So I saw, like, on the worksheet, I went into the turnaround to him, and then I went into it to myself. That took much more time to take it to me, but it happened. And
well, what it sounds like then from your description is, so this is like this is a third thing, like out of the potentials here. Like, so there's the freeze I described, and there's the processing, and this sounds like a wave going through, an emotional wave going through. I've said that before, like I describe emotions as waves, and they sort of have their movement through, and what we sometimes do in communication is we start communicating while the wave is in us, and that's when we start doing stupid stuff, right? That's when we react in a way that we regret afterwards, because it's not actually us reacting, it's the emotion that's reacting. So to take the pause, and based on the tears, that's what it sounds like, to really take in the hit, and then the build and the swell and then the crash, and then let it go through. And then when we are on the other side, we are able to say, whoa, that was really intense. But then there is that lightness that you described, like we are ready to move on, either in the conversation or even out of it. And it feels to me there's wisdom in waiting with the communication until we've had that wave come through. And that happens. That happens. I had a similar situation with my wife again, where we were talking. She was telling me something that really hit me, and I did this, and I had several waves that needed to get through, and she was like completely freaking out because she was so concerned what I was going through. But she gave me the space to have the waves come through, and then afterwards we could then discuss what had happened, and what I was reacting to and what was going on. And she's been like, it seemed like it really impacted her to see me in that, and it has scared her off a bit. So I've then had to say to her, don't take the wave as the story about where I am with this. It was the wave, and I'm somewhere else now. But I think the essence is in that example to allow the wave to go through before you continue the process. And And so this is a slower pace of communicating. It's like a deeper, slower way, which can have 5 minutes of silence in the middle of them, or, you know, which can be very different than both of us surfing the wave and just going explosion, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you know, over time, at least in my experience, I become able to go through the waves even with people who are not committed or open to that kind of communication, because I have realized I have a right to silence. I have a right to just sit with my eyes closed. You know, I don't have to respond to anything. And if they really push me for it, I can say, I need 5 minutes. We need to wait.
Yeah.
So I can set those boundaries and then have my process, because I found it's just more constructive, and I prefer it that way, even with people who are, even if, of course, sometimes it can feel a little confusing to others, because that's not a way we usually. Speed is usually a preference in society, right?
Yeah.
Does that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Ragnar, would you just mute yourself again, Ragnar, please? Go on, Tamira.
Yeah, I'm just thinking that since we started, I feel like I'm heading more into direction of communicating differently, like really communicating from a different place. I was with my best friend in holidays with the kids, and it was just different. I held myself different, and just what I was experiencing. And then it feels there's a different kind of vulnerability showing up than the ones we talked with Vanessa, because I know that like the vulnerability is showing it out. I know that place within me as well.
Yeah.
And that place it's a different vulnerability if I come from that. Just sharing what is going on and staying with it, and staying true to it.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you. Yeah, I'm super grateful for just this subtle journey.
Yeah. Yeah. It's oh man, there's a sweetness to that more quiet sensitivity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to end, I couldn't do the practice last time with you guys, and then I just sat with myself and noticed myself, and I just now often do a morning walk with myself, just even if I look in the mirror or if I touch myself, just touch hand, wow. That was
well, that's a very sweet variation on the you're talking about the exercise of noticing with the other.
Yeah.
Wow, I haven't done that. That would be fun to just stand in front of a mirror.
Yeah.
And then do it with yourself.
or just
I noticed you look surprised.
Right.
Yeah. No mirror necessarily needed. I get that. Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. I notice. Yeah. Thanks, Tamira. To the late arrivals, I saw you wrote that, Katerina. Yes, you are late. I'm so confused with time change. Yes, we began an hour ago. Nice that you came. So you've already had that cleared out. Yes.
You're all smart one. I'm a victim again. I'm thinking, why wasn't an email like we start like different time?
Well,
so it's your fault.
I get that, and I could find myself just about to explain it to you, but I'll just not do it. That's good. It's my fault, Katerina, and I take full responsibility. No problem. Okay. Yeah. So anyone else about the homework or about Elena is late too. Yes, good. So you're not the only one who's stupid, Katerina.
I know. I consult her actually.
You asked her.
Yes.
Oh, you pulled each other down. Oh my God! So it's her fault also. It's actually all Elena's fault.
What time was the class today?
That's what I would suggest.
It's my fault.
Yeah. Any other?
Katrina, we're gonna listen to the recording, hopefully. Yeah.
Yes, you will. I have the
so
option,
next week it's gonna be an hour earlier, right?
No. This is the time. We've had one time last week. It was moved 1 hour for you because the time shift is different in Europe and the US. But now it'll be this time the rest of the original time and the rest of the
Thank
time.
you.
Yes.
Thank you.
And by this time, I mean the time we started today. Good. Keith Lee.
Good morning. Sorry I was late as well. I only got here 20 minutes late because Vanessa texted me. Said, where are you? I had when we had that conversation last week about the why, and then it evolved into you saying that there were two reasons for the why, and one was to sort of in that, I know mind, to feel safety and control, and the other was more of a inducing guilt, like why did you do that, and not it being authentic. But I was thinking, and maybe this is just because of my training, but I was thinking that you can ask somebody why in a very compassionate and authentic way. Instead of saying, why did you do that? You can say, do you know why you did that? Do you have thoughts about why you decided to do that? And then that can open up a conversation.
For sure.
Without feeling like you're being judgmental. You're just curious, like why,
Well, absolutely. Like the why can come from a curious place, and it's not, to my mind, it's not so important then how you phrase it. So that's, I think you've heard me say that, right? That's the word jujitsu thing. Like, it's not so much about the wording. It's the motive. It's the intention behind, and that will always seep through. So whether you phrase it one way or another way, if you're coming from a kind and curious place, you can also just say, "Why did you do that?" Right? And I'm trying to emulate kind, and I don't know how.
It didn't work.
No. But my point was, to do it, you can do it. You understand what I mean, I think.
Yeah, I do.
So it's not so much the phrasing, and the phrasing can be helpful, and of course the phrasing mirrors some of the intention very often, but you can't cover up bad intention with good phrasing. It doesn't work that way.
That if you say to the person, "Why did you do that?" that automatically can separate you. It's sort of being, in a way, that if you ask the person from their perspective,
do you know why you did that? I think there's a lot of truth there. Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth there. And still, if you are actually just in the business of pointing out mistakes, then do you know why you did that can also be an attack.
Right?
And
I see.
That's what I'm pointing to. Yeah, you can't get out of bad intention with good phrasing.
Oh yeah, I've never thought of that as being an attack, but I can,
Yeah, okay. I can make any sentence an attack. Wow, you look good, huh? By the way, there's this really funny thing. When we do this, like, and just play with doing it at random time. What was the sentence? Oh yeah. So the sentence is, congratulations with your baby, right? And just notice this. Congratulations with your baby, right? Or this one, congratulations with your baby, right? Or congratulations with your baby. They're all so beautiful. So we can take any sentence and make it like into all kinds of stuff with phrasing or signaling of different kinds. Well, that was a little bonus. Thank you, Keith Lee. Sweet. Atul.
What comment on the homework, and then a question from the interchange with Vanessa that, if we have time, I'd like to get some clarity on. The homework, what I found was it was really helpful, particularly in the turnarounds, that often when I'm doing the turnarounds, I am stuck in a certain pattern. There are only certain set of turnarounds that come to me. And in this case, I was working with Abby. And because the exercise was, she was sharing what's coming up for her as well, I invited her. She checked if she could share what was coming up for her in terms of other possible turnarounds.
So you were client here.
I was the client and she was the facilitator. And they were just incredibly powerful turnarounds.
So wait a minute, Atul. Is it the turnaround phrasings or the examples you're talking about here? Is it the examples?
If I can give you specifics. No, so it was other potential turnarounds to my original statement that she thought of that would be helpful for me to inquire into. Did that clarify it?
Yes.
And so this is just an observation. It wasn't a deep question. Typically in these exercises, I found the facilitator will only hold me to the turnarounds I have and then keep looking for examples of that.
Okay. Okay.
But what I found is, for me, because I'm stuck in my own kind of mindset, that there are, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's really helpful to be able to access the facilitator's intelligence, not intelligence as an intellectual intelligence, but their resonance, maybe the word you use, because it opened up possibilities of potential turnarounds that I wasn't even able to come up with. And that I thought was a real gift of this exercise, because it was a more interactive facilitation than just holding me in my turnarounds. So I just wanted to, I guess, mention it. I don't know why I'm saying it, but I found that helpful as part of
good. And I just want to add then that to me, that's part of the facilitator job, to offer the different, like the turnarounds the client doesn't see within the scope of sort of accepted turnarounds or correct turnarounds. Just as an offering, like, I see a turnaround, would you like to hear it? And the other person can say, yeah, and then you can offer the turnaround to self, or if the person hasn't seen it. So for me, that would be part of a standard facilitation.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was very helpful.
But that's good to hear.
The question I had, sorry, go ahead.
No, that was the question. Yeah, go ahead.
The question, I think, both Vanessa and Tamara's conversation is so subtle. I'm at one level blown away, and maybe perhaps today I'm the only man on the board here.
I'm here.
Other than the guru himself.
Oh, I'm the guru, of course. Then I don't count as a man. We know that. They are.
You're in a special status than us.
Clearly, I've put all that behind me. Yeah.
It's like I'm listening to it and I'm saying, boy, they're at a different league. The game they're playing is so much more subtle, and access to what they have. If I am any at all representative, which obviously is not true, of what I see in other men, peers and colleagues of mine, it's like we are lost in this game. It's like, I don't know how to even respond, and it's so sophisticated. So what came up in that context for me, particularly from what Vanessa was saying, and I wanted to check, is this whole vulnerability exchange, right? I'm being vulnerable, and there is a subtle expectation which I could resonate with Vanessa, that the other one would also drop into, or at least attempt to be more revealing or more vulnerable. And if that's not happening, then my vulnerability feels like a little bit of a manipulative strategy to control.
Not a little bit.
Right. And I see that happening a lot in the leadership circles that I'm part of these days, where vulnerability is being taught as a strategy.
Right. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
But the question I have is, in the moment that you are genuinely being vulnerable, not in any control way, and you experience a lack of connection because the other person either consciously or is incapable of doing vulnerability, of being vulnerable
Yeah.
in the manner that you can appreciate it. That's the other thing, right? I
Sure.
have a idea that if somebody's being vulnerable, it has to look and feel and
A certain way.
has,
Yeah.
in fact, almost has a certain language to it that
Yeah.
find. Is there room, because of some of the other work I'm doing on personal growth, that in those moments, I just mourn. There's a kind of mourning step where you just almost tell your inner parts of you that are craving for that connection and are unable to get it, instead of going even more externally to demand it of the other, to in some ways comfort the vulnerable parts within me that are at that stage being naked, as I don't know who used the phrase, then I have found it helpful to me to just do a little bit of mourning, to say, yeah, this need is not being met. And it's okay to mourn, and just the kind of human experience of not always being able to be met in the way, particularly your inner, more childlike parts would like to be met and held. So it's more a question.
Yeah, well, I remember we had at some other time a brief dialogue about this where I agreed very much with the strategy of mourning. And in this context, first, the situations we were discussing were situations where I, as you say, use my vulnerability to manipulate, to try to get you to be vulnerable, and so I go too far, right? And so in that, I would say I would be more interested in questioning. I need him, her to be vulnerable, right? That sounds more like a relevant path for me, simply because I don't believe that can be true. So in that situation, I think, and as part of that, I guess in question 3, there could be some mourning if that feels relevant. If it's like a really important relationship in your life or something, and you just realize there's no way I'm ever going to get it here, then that feels relevant. But I would probably be more like, in this situation, I need him to be vulnerable. Is that true, right? And then work through that. That's sort of part 1 of it. And part 2 is when you don't go too far. It's my experience that I really don't need you to be vulnerable. If I bring my vulnerability on the level that is balanced for me to bring, I will feel complete independent of what you do.
Right.
That's my experience. So I will share about what I feel about your leaving the sports clothes out on the floor and what it does to me or something. And then I won't need or expect anything from you in return. Yeah, I don't know if the sports clothes there was the best example. I think Vanessa used a different example for the vulnerability situation. But anyway, that's my experience, that when I bring myself on the right level, if we call it that, or to the right extent, I feel complete, and there is no need for mourning. There is no demand on you. You're free. You're free to show up any way you want, and I'm going to respond vulnerably to everything you do, if that's what's true for me. And then that's it. And if you want to hurt me with your words, I will share what that's like for me. And yeah.
I have to think about that. I mean, I have to process that. That's,
yeah, I get that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Something in the chat. Good, Brenda. Brenda Ninbar, good. You have peers, Atul, in that thing. Yeah, Camilla.
Yeah, I just want to share because you talked about emotions are like waves.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was doing the session or the homework with my partner, I actually right now discover that I went through these waves
Uh-huh.
and that was because I went through emotions like sorrow and it was like really tears were pouring out and then it just waved away,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
guilt came up and then
Yeah.
that waved away again,
Yeah.
and I was a little bit puzzled. So I'm very happy for this image of images or emotions being waves, because then it's like I just observed that it was okay. And I observed that during these weeks doing all the work with you as a group, I discovered that there has been less drama when I'm getting into these waves. And so I'm more observing, or letting it be.
Yeah.
And then suddenly the byproduct of that is that things are actually okay. And suddenly my connections, my husband or my son, they react in a more useful or better way, I think.
Yeah.
Better way,
Yeah. Yeah. From your perspective. Yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So that means less conflict,
Yeah.
and that's really in the communication, and that's I just did these observations, and that's really interesting. It's like
Yeah.
the work is working even though I'm not working or doing
Yeah.
the work, it's
Yeah.
kind of a
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's really beautiful. And I want to say that for me these days, the work, like doing the work process, can very often be with very few words. It's experiencing more. So there are long periods of silences, of letting waves come through, or going deep into like what something costs me or what something feels like, and that feels very like there's definitely been over the years a shift from words into experience, and that is from sound to silence more and more. So it sounds wonderful to and I hope your facilitator gave you the space then, because that can sometimes be the problem, to trust. As facilitators, we sometimes feel we have to do something, and we do not allow our clients the space and the time to really sit in something. And I just want to remind everyone that they will let you know if they're getting like fidgety or like ready to move on. They'll let you know one way or another. So until they do that, you can just leave them in their space. Usually they need, like, their sense of time is very different from yours, and their need for time is different from how it's experienced from the outside. So that's great, Camilla. Yeah, go on.
But I would say that's also the good thing about this I could have I could have been in that wave and explored it even deeper,
Yeah.
But because of my partner in the homework was using whatever appeared in him,
Yeah.
then he stopped me in that process. But then I also accepted that it was okay.
Yeah.
Even though I felt like, oh no, I was just okay. But then I just followed, and that was
good.
also good.
Yes, exactly.
Because
Definitely.
it was like a practice. Usually I would like to have the control, and I would like to, and it was like, oh, and then I actually experienced the whole inquiry like a conversation with a friend instead,
Yeah.
And that was actually a very nice experience, because I don't know my partner that well, so it was in that way it was a lot of wow, okay, yeah, well, just follow, and then you get something. Exactly.
Surrendering to that. So that those are like all the things you're pointing to are really beautiful. The waves going through, and then what I brought, allowing time, but then also the surrendering to what's going on instead of fighting against it or wanting to control it. And then that particular state that can come where it really feels like a conversation with a friend, like as a shared inquiry more than me like holding you or guiding you, but it's like we're just in this communication that allows for some really deep, in my experience, some really deep and sweet work. So that's great to hear. Thank you. Okay. So I want to move us on to a little thing. Now, are you hearing this music in the background? Okay, so these are good. It's only me who are hearing the bass pumping. All right, so I would like us to try something. I'm going to guide us through a little dream journey in a way. So like it would be a meditation, but for me, it's not meditation. It's more like a little journey. And I would like you to be comfortable as we do that. I think it'll be about 15 minutes of it or so. And I also want to say that with the homework instructions, we may go a few minutes over time today. And if you have to leave, you leave, of course. But get comfy, whatever that is for you. And if you prefer, you can also switch off the camera. That's fine. And I'm just going to go ask to get the music turned down a little bit because I need to be able to focus as well. But with these things, I can bring you with me. Kan vi skrue en lille smule ned? Fordi det er lidt højt. There, now you heard my Danish as well. Ja, det er også sådan om det, jeg skal lige guide en lidt. Så tusind tak. All right, so we haven't started yet. Okay, so close your eyes, get comfortable. It's probably a good idea to have pen and paper nearby to take some notes at the end. So just have that available. And what we're going to do is, the purpose is to show you like a different way into uncovering some material to work on. And I'm going to take you on a little shamanic journey or a little dream journey into your inner worlds to uncover some material to work on from in there. So this is about trusting the intelligence of our unconscious to do what is required. So you just follow along, and then you just trust whatever comes up for you as you journey in. So take a couple of deep breaths just to center and relax and let go of all that we've been talking about and all of that. Trust that what's important will stay with you. And take a moment again to just center in this present moment right now. You here, breathing. Notice your feet, how they feel. Soles of your feet, relax them as best you can. Relax the palms of your hands. Relax. And relax your forehead and your scalp. And see if you can relax all three places at the same time. Or all five if you like. Simultaneously, just letting go. And allowing breath to deepen further. And then experience a sense of sinking, of becoming heavy, of sliding downwards in a good, positive, safe dive downwards, pleasantly heavy and pleasantly sinking into yourself, into your inner world, sliding downwards, heavier, pleasantly deep, until you find yourself in a forest, a beautiful, comfortable forest. Notice what it looks like, what you can hear, what you can see. Feeling comfortably present in this beautiful forest, standing on a path that leads through the forest, and you start walking along that path towards an opening leading out of the forest and into a landscape, an open landscape, where you can see a small village. The village of your ordered mind, of your conscious mind. And you keep walking and get closer, and you can see the houses and the paths between them. This is the village of your conscious mind. And you can notice what it looks like, what it feels like. As you enter the village and walk around a bit, just taking in the kind of environment, the kind of atmosphere. Noticing details. Just walking around in this village and taking it in. Moving towards the other side of the village from where you entered, where another path leads out of the village. And you leave it behind as you walk on. Further into the countryside. towards a river. A river that cuts off the path. And you can see in the distance there is a bridge across the river. Bridge to the other side. To that which has been pushed away from the village of the conscious mind. And there's a very different landscape on the other side of the river. And there's a bridge. And there is a guard guarding the bridge. Who ensures that no one moves across the bridge from either side. But you have permission to cross the river. And you can walk past the guard and into that landscape on the other side. That wilderness. And here lives the parts that have been pushed out. This is where they roam. Safely kept away from the conscious mind. And you can notice what it looks like here. Can sense these beings that live here on this side of the river. And you can explore this area. Again, you're free to move safely around. And examine this other world. Where the beings live that have been pushed out of conscious awareness. Who are the beings that live here? You will notice that one of them sticks out in some way. One of them is special to you right now. Catches your eye, your interest. I invite you to move closer to that particular one. Examine it closer. Who is this one that has been pushed away? What is this energy? How does it feel about it? How does it respond to being pushed away from conscious mind? How does it act and behave? For a moment, experience it from the inside. Experience its experience. How does it see the world from its perspective? And then step back out of it. Experience it from the outside. And what are the judgments on it from the village of the conscious mind that has pushed it out here in the wilderness? Why is it not allowed over the bridge? Why is it being kept away? What are the judgments? The fears, the beliefs. And you can bid it farewell in whatever form that makes sense. And begin to move back to the bridge. knowing that it is not yet welcome on the other side, but maybe there is a way to one day allow it to cross past the guard. As you are passing the guard now, moving along the path from the bridge to the village of the conscious mind, and back through the village, along the path to the forest, the beautiful, comfortable forest. Back to where you started. And allowing the forest to drop away, you flow back up. Back up. At a pleasant pace, peaceful, comfortable, gliding upwards, upwards to this moment, to yourself, as you're sitting or lying right here, right now. Remembering the being in the wilderness, the experience of connecting with it, the judgments on it. And bringing that with you into this present moment. Get ready to, in a moment, take notes of the most important discoveries and beliefs that you've found on your journey. The judgments, the insights, the thoughts worth working. And when you're ready, take a deep breath, open your eyes, and take some minutes to write down what you found, what you would like to explore, what you want to work. Here you are now, bringing pen to paper, writing. The thoughts, beliefs, judgments that are relevant to bring out. Yeah, you'll have another minute or so within the frame of the session. Okay. Any pressing questions or comments that needs to be expressed or asked? Good. So your homework will be to meet with your partner, and whatever you've uncovered here, some of you will have like just a clear judgment or a number of them ready to work. Some of you will have like just maybe a complex set of emotions or relating to this part, or whatever you have, you bring that to your facilitator when you meet, and together you will uncover some one-liners that you can work on through your session. Keithley. Still muted.
I know.
Yep.
So I had sort of a difficult time with this. I felt like there was a certain way I was supposed to be doing it, and that when we saw these beings across the river who had been thrown out of conscious awareness, I immediately identified a couple of human beings. And then I thought, no, this is supposed to be something in my own psyche that I've thrown out.
Okay.
And so I don't know if, but I discovered that if it was my own psyche, I had compassion and love and saw it as scared and lonely. And then when I saw it as this horrible human being, I had no compassion. I never wanted them to be able to come over the bridge, and thought they don't care what anybody thinks, so they're not sad or lonely. So is that, I mean, was there a certain way we were supposed to do it, or was it whatever came up? And do I look at how, I mean, should my stressful thought be that I can feel no compassion for Stephen Miller?
Well, there was no certain way to do this. No demands outside of it. Thanks, Camilla. Yeah, a few of you will be leaving now. That's perfectly fine. I'll just answer this. It'll be in the recording, and I'll post it online for those that need it. No, there wasn't any particular way. And if Stephen Miller showed up, that's interesting. And it's looking at like what, for me, it would be like, what does he represent in you that is pushed out? And it could be just a good old worksheet on Stephen Miller, you know, because he lives in there, it seems. Would be nice to get him over the bridge, perhaps. but there was no particular demand or anything. This is like creating a container or a space where your unconscious can speak to you. That's all it is, and whatever shows up is right. Yeah, and maybe, you know, yeah, you just sit with it, you look at it, and And I want to say, I didn't say that before, but I'll add that in the homework, that if nothing happened or if you can't use what came up, just work on something else, of course. This may not be, something that works for everyone. That's also possible. But at least, Keithley, I think there's a worksheet on Stephen Miller there, right? Not wanting him across the bridge. So let's fingers crossed for the election. Yeah. but yeah. Does that answer your question for now, Keithley?
Yes, thank you.
And if there's more, let's do it on Facebook, right? Because I really want to respect everyone's time, and thank you for hanging on a little longer than planned. So if you have any more questions about this, just ask them on Facebook, and otherwise I'll post the instructions as always, and I'll see you in a week. And Katerina and Elena, you can just contact me if you want some input on what time we're meeting. And and thank you all for a lovely time. Have a good day, evening, whatever it is. See you in a week or so. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Hej då.
Hej då. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.